Hello, podcast fam. I am thrilled to share some exciting news. My book, Sow, Grow, Lead, is officially live on Amazon. This book is more than just my story of starting a nonprofit and building a peanut butter factory in Malawi. Though trust me, the ups and downs of that journey are worth the read. It's also packed with practical strategies to help nonprofit leaders like you tackle challenges with clarity, courage, and a whole lot of heart. If you've ever wondered how to turn your vision into reality, navigate the inevitable hurdles, and build something meaningful, whether in your organization or in your own life, this book is for you. I'd be so grateful for your support in spreading the word. Grab your copy of Sow, Grow, Lead in the show notes and on Amazon today. Let's keep sowing seeds of impact together. Welcome to the Lead with Heart podcast, which is dedicated to nonprofit leaders who are passionate about making a difference. I'm your host, Haley Cooper, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on a journey of growth, inspiration, and transformation. At Lead with Heart, we believe that leading with heart means embracing empathy, compassion, and authenticity in every aspect of our work. It's about putting people first, fostering genuine connections, and creating a positive impact that goes beyond numbers and metrics. In the nonprofit world, it can often feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. The challenges are immense and the road can be lonely. But here, you're not alone. This podcast is a community where we support each other, share our stories, and learn together. Each episode will dive into personal and professional development topics tailored specifically for nonprofit leaders. From innovative fundraising strategies and effective team management to self-care practices and leadership insights, we're here to provide you with practical strategies that you can apply to your life and work. My goal is to empower you, elevate your leadership, and engage your heart in all that you do. I want to help you navigate the unique challenges of the nonprofit sector with confidence and resilience, so you can continue to create meaningful change in the world. So whether you're driving to a meeting, taking a break, or winding down for the day, tune in and join us on this journey. Together, we'll discover what it truly means to lead with heart. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lead with Heart podcast. This is your host, Haley Cooper, and our guest today is Ruthe, the visionary founder of the Last Mile Education Fund, also known as LMEF. And LMEF takes a disruptive approach to bridging critical gaps in financial support for low-income and underrepresented students, ensuring they can complete their degrees and enter the tech workforce. Since its inception in 2020, LMEF has awarded over 8,000 grants, totaling $8.5 million, significantly impacting the lives of tech-focused students across the nation. As a national nonprofit, LMEF is committed to addressing social mobility and tech diversity by investing in overlooked and under-resourced talent. Well, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited you're here, Ruthe.
I am happy to be here.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and the inspiration behind founding LMEF?
Yeah, so Last Mile, I actually shortened it to Last Mile myself. I've been in the tech inclusion, gender equity, and tech space for, like over 20 years. I started out with the Girl Scouts back in 2001, working on STEM education for girls. And throughout my career of developing programs and pathways for underrepresented students into high demand fields like computer science and engineering, I kept seeing really promising students that I'd been watching since they were quite young start to stumble later in the process. And I would intervene. I would use my networks or my social capital or whatever I needed to do to help them get over whatever that challenge was. And the sort of pivotal inspirational moment was in 2017 when my co-founder, Ryan, was a rising senior in software engineering in Mississippi and was going to cancel an internship she had committed to because she couldn't afford the travel from her home state to where she needed to go for the internship, because most internships pay you your relocation after you arrive. And so that assumes that you have access to $3,000 of credit to relocate yourself at your own expense. And that's just not attainable for a lot of students coming from lower income families. And so at the time, I used 10,000 air miles and my social networks to get her to that internship, find her a place to stay. And she's been at the bank for several years now, and she's successful and she owns a home and got married recently, has an adorable baby. It's life-changing. And it was maybe $2,000 of an intervention at the right time. So we sat down together, her and I and her professor, Sarah, and we're like, how do we scale this for the students that don't have someone in their life that is going to make that intervention for them?
Yeah, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing your story. And what specifically motivated you to focus on increasing diversity in the tech and engineering fields through financial support?
So one, the fact that there's a desperate need in the United States for technology talent. The United States has a innovation-based economy. We're not going back to a agriculture or a manufacturing-based economy. And for us to remain at the forefront globally and compete in technology, we need to have the talent to do it. Unfortunately, the United States has the most diverse talent pipeline in the world. We're the only first world nation with a native diverse population at scale. And so we have this huge competitive advantage. Also, we all inhabit a world of technology all the time. Every day you're spending time interacting with technology. Unfortunately, right now, that technology is largely being built by only a subset of the population, primarily white and Asian men. And it can't possibly be as good as it should be and serve as many people as it should serve and serve all the needs if it's not built by all of us. And so I don't want to live in a technical world built for all of us by some of us. It really needs to be built by all of us, which is why I care so much about women and girls and underrepresented students having their seat at the table in technology.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think the more diversity there is, the more it'll attract that diverse talent, because people will see someone like me is at the table. Someone like me accomplished all of this. I can too. And I think that's such an important perspective. The question is, how will LMEF build upon the research foundation of GET Cities? What is GET Cities? To further the understanding and achieving the gender equity in tech?
Yeah, so Get Cities, Get Cities is an organization that was stood up about 5 years ago with the goal of bringing everything to bear related to gender equity in tech in a place-based way. So what if we went to a community and made sure that the whole system, top to bottom, was supportive of women being in technology? And that organization, they are sunsetting. They've been operating for 5 years and they've learned a lot. So they're sunsetting and they're transitioning their work to community. And we were fortunate to have a really great relationship with them. And they are transitioning their research team to us. And what that means is, like you said at the beginning, we have funded more than 8,000 students. We have tremendous amounts of data about the experience of students from poverty going through the pipeline to become an engineer. Most engineers are children of engineers. That's the way the world works, right? So if we're going to diversify technology and bring people from lots of different backgrounds in, we need to understand what factors make that possible. One factor we know for sure is financial support, which is what we're providing. But there's other factors: social support, access to resources, knowledge of how you navigate the college experience and the pathway to a job. So we have been doing bits of research and evaluation on a ad hoc basis, but now with this gift essentially from Get Cities, we do have a full-time research director who is Dr. Sarah Outland. She's a University of Chicago PhD sociologist, and she's going to be working with our team and our data team to understand end to end, how much money does it take to get a low-income student to graduation? How often do they need that support? What other support do they need besides the financial security to make sure that they're actually launching commensurate with their affluent peers? Because it matters that you graduate, but it also matters that you get a job comparable to your peers. And where you start in that first job in terms of the level and the salary will matter for the rest of your life. Because ultimately our goal is to lift people and their families and their communities out of poverty. and a technical job is the fastest route in terms of like professional jobs, you can get a technical career that pays six figures in 2 to 4 years of education compared to going to law school, becoming a doctor, which is 6 to 12 years of education. So it's a great way to both diversify technology, make it better for all of us, but also bring communities and families out of poverty.
Yeah, and I think that's so important to tackle all of those issues on the head, right? Like it's not just about providing financial support, which is crucial, like you said, to getting your co-founder to that job to then receive that income. But there's so many other factors at play to really help these individuals realize their innate potential in the tech industry. And you mentioned in your mission statement that last mile is a disruptive approach. So how does it differ from other approaches that help students like get into the workforce and stay in the workforce?
Yeah. So what's interesting is we're a scholarship, but we're not a scholarship in that scholarships historically have been about finding outliers and rewarding them for being outliers. So show me how amazing you already are, and I'm going to give you resources so you can keep being amazing. If you stop being amazing, we're going to take those resources away. That's how it works. Also, scholarships tend to be focused on let's get a lot of students to apply and then pick the best one. Who's the best? Whereas our approach is I'm going to fund every possible student that I can. Trust-based philanthropy from an abundance approach. If you have made it to your junior year in computer science or engineering in the United States of America while navigating the higher ed financial aid system, you have proven that you have problem-solving skills, that you have persistence, that you have grit and resilience, right? We want you to finish. So we don't ask for GPA. We don't care what your GPA is. If you are in this major and you want to graduate, we're going to help you get there. Because the worst outcome for society is a person who had the potential to be an engineer or a technologist, has 2 years of college debt, but no degree to back it up. When they graduate, we all win. They will earn more money. They will pay more in taxes. They will contribute more to the economy. It will contribute to innovation. And the other side of that coin is someone who can't service their student debt, doesn't ever contribute to the tax base in the way that they could. It's just a loss for all of us. And we have calculated that every student who makes it to their junior year in college in a STEM discipline in the United States, society has invested $477,000 of sunk costs.
Wow.
Why would we let that student fail over a few $1,000s of extra expenses? Like, we are leveraging all that money that's been invested, all that time, millions and millions of dollars a year on STEMspiration and robotics programs and all the things we're trying to do to get kids in. But we are letting 80% of the bottom 2 income quartiles of students fail to graduate. 80%. If we can just close that loop and get them graduating at a similar rate to their affluent peers, we will have a huge gain as a society. Economically, socially, and technology will just simply be better.
Yeah, there's like a ripple effect of change that happens from helping these individuals graduate. And I'm a fundraiser, so I have to ask this question before I ask how you're going to use the money from Get Cities. But what is your funding model, and how do you invite partners in to invest in the students that you're supporting?
Sure. So our biggest expense is obviously grants to students. That's 90% of what we spend our money on. So anyone is invited to contribute into that bucket of money that we use to invest in the students. And I do say invest because the ROI on that, every student that graduates will earn $43,375 per year more.
Wow.
Than if they have some college and no degree. So like huge, right? Our average investment is $1,100 per student. So through our abundance-based approach, we can invest in a lot of students that don't graduate, but one that graduates, the ROI is $43,000 in 1 year, right? So the ROI is very fast and it's immediate. So anyone can contribute directly into the fund. We also have custom or white label funds. So we have a big program with Microsoft that is specifically funding 10,000 community college students that are in cybersecurity pathways. There's a 700,000 worker shortage in the United States for cybersecurity. So they made a big investment a couple of years ago to try to grow that workforce. And part of that is working with us to make sure that these students have cash support as well as access to LinkedIn Premium, support for getting their certification exams, things like that. So we do these sort of branded custom funds with partners. So we have a fund with Dow. We have a really interesting fund with actually the Detroit Chamber of Commerce. So the Detroit Chamber of Commerce has brought together funders from the region, and we operate a fund for any student in the Detroit metro area that's in a STEM discipline. And so that's about growing the STEM economy of the Detroit region. And so there's a lot of different ways this can play out. The impact of our dollars is immediate, and we give them to the students very quickly. That's the other way we're disruptive. We don't compare students to each other, and we answer them immediately, and we respond and make their decision within usually less than 2 weeks. Sometimes as quickly as a week, we are dispersing cash. Most scholarships, you're shouting into the void. You put your scholarship application out there and you wait 3 to 10 months for maybe some kind of response. So a lot of students will say to us, they're like, I can't believe you responded. No one's ever responded before. And so it's actually funny because if you Google us, the first thing that comes up is people ask, is Last Mile Education Fund legit? Because it's too good to be true. Like people are like, why would these random people just invest in me? And so we have to actually overcome this hump of convincing students that we are in fact real.
Yeah, and I think that's so important too. Moving the money fast makes it more equitable and accessible because that's like a matter of, will they get the job or will they get that next year of investment in their school? And I think moving the needle that way is so important. And you talked about this abundance-based approach. And a lot of nonprofits don't operate like that. A lot of them operate with scarcity. So can you talk a little bit more about what the leadership mindset behind the abundance-based approach is and how your whole organization embraces that idea?
Yeah, so what I mean by abundance-based approach is one, we take an abundance viewpoint to who qualifies, right? So we're not making them perform their poverty and upload a ton of documents and prove to us or give us their taxes or anything. If they qualify for federal financial aid, we consider them low income enough to qualify for our funding, right? If they don't have that kind of documentation, perhaps they're an international student, perhaps they're a refugee or a DACA students, then we will take those on a case-by-case basis. But there's not a lot of hurdles on the front end. Like I said, we don't ask for GPA. They just need to be enrolled in a degree program that's within our qualifications. The other thing is we're not policing what they spend the money on. It's a relatively small amount of money often. I don't want receipts. I don't want to make you prove you spent this money on food or housing or whatever you said you were going to. We believe in them. These young people are going to be future engineers and technologists. I can trust them with $1,000 to make a choice about what they're going to spend it on. Because so many scholarships are like, this is only for tuition, or this is only for books, or this is only for a specific cost, not recognizing that sometimes paying your mom's electric bill is what's keeping you from staying in college.
Yeah.
And we have paid for students to cremate their parent.
Wow.
We have paid for dental work. We have paid for car repairs. 40% of Americans cannot survive an unexpected $400 expense. What do we think is happening to a student when they get sick and can't work for 2 weeks? And one thing that really struck me was after the Michigan State shooting a couple of years ago, or I think it was about a year and a half ago, 3 weeks later, we get a whole bunch of applications from students who are like, well, my workplace shut down for 2 weeks after that shooting. And so I can't make my rent now. And so like students who weren't even involved in the shooting are experiencing downline effects from the whole city shut down in the aftermath of that event. And so unexpected things like that can completely disrupt a student's pathway at a critical time. We had another student who literally smack in the middle of her last term in computer science, there was a flood. It was a FEMA event. It was a whole thing. She lost everything. And she went to her institution and was like, I need a computer to finish college. And they were like, oh, here's a Chromebook. Well, she was a senior in computer science. A Chromebook is a web browser. Like that's not going to do the job. And if she waited for the FEMA relief, she would have to drop out and rebuild her life and then at some point come back. Instead, we invested, got her a MacBook Pro the next day, thanks Best Buy, and then got her an air mattress and blankets and all the things she needed so she could stick out those 2 more months, graduate, and be ready to go into a job that would pay her a professional salary. Who knows what might have happened if we hadn't been able to support her. She could have been delayed by an entire year, 2 years, or never go back to college at all.
Yeah, I think that's so important because you think about just on a national level, like most people don't have more than $400 in their savings account. So any event like that is catastrophic. And when you don't go to work because of X, Y, and Z, that's a life or death situation. So I think it's really important that paying for those things helps them be able to focus on school, right? And helps them to be able to, yes, all of this chaos is happening in the background, but that education can be that stable source for them. And I think it's really important that with the work that you're doing to empower these students. And you've talked a lot about partnerships. So how do you identify partnerships and how did you access partnerships with Microsoft and LinkedIn? And why are these crucial for building a more equitable workplace?
Well, so ultimately, I think that our sustainability model and our funding model is going to be partnerships like what we have with Microsoft, where ultimately Microsoft and Google and Capital One and all these different companies, they're the ones who are going to benefit from this talent. They should be investing in this talent. And I actually like to say, what is going to endear you to a student more? The fact that you gave them a hoodie or a water bottle at a career fair, or the fact that you paid their rent their senior year? If you want to make an impact. So I would love it if every company was going to just set aside a portion of their recruiting budget to invest in last mile students, because they're not changing their major in their last 2 years. We know exactly what they're majoring in. We know exactly where they are and when they're going to graduate. So you can make those late stage investments and you're getting an engineer in 6 to 18 months, as opposed to spending $1,000 on a summer camp for kids in middle school. You might get an engineer in 6 to 12 years, maybe, but you certainly don't have enough of a close connection to know that they're coming to you, to your company. So I think that from a sustainability perspective, there's that. The other thing is we need to change hearts and minds among employers about the potential of this talent pool. So a couple of years ago, Dwana Franklin Davis from Reboot Representation and I co-authored an article in TechCrunch that was titled, "Hey, Tech Companies, Stop Conflating Privilege with Potential." And everybody in their hiring processes has to use some kind of shortcut, right? How are you going to filter through all these applications and choose the right people? Well, some of those shortcuts end up eliminating the kinds of students we're serving. So if GPA minimum, well, your GPA in many ways is a function of how much free time you have. How many hours are you spending working versus studying? So a student who doesn't have as much money is going to be spending precious time waitressing, driving for Lyft or Uber, etc., while their peers who don't have to work are studying, right? When you set a GPA minimum to even apply to your company, you're eliminating a lot of high potential talent. Second is looking at things like the institution you got into when you were 17 is much more an indicator of your parents' affluence and the zip code you were born into and the quality of the high school you attended than anything about your innate ability or talent. So we overvalue those indicators and we undervalue things like, I put myself through community college and mid-state college working full time because I wanted this degree. And I have examples of students over and over who did that, and yet they're discounted in the hiring process because they don't look like these other students. And I would argue that not only are these students great, and they have great potential as employees, they actually often make better employees because they have had to persist and struggle and pick themselves up and keep moving when things were hard. And I think it's a hard to quantify thing, but we know it's true of this population. The other thing I'm working on with the corporate sector and the partnership. So LinkedIn provides LinkedIn Premium to all of the students who receive our scholarships from Microsoft. That's huge to help them network, to build their online presence as a professional, to find a job, right? So that's really helpful. It's a value that we can add. And we insist that every student apply to us with a LinkedIn profile. They have to have one with a photo. We use it to confirm their identity, but it's also setting them up for success because that's part of how you present yourself to the world as a professional. And then finally, I'm working on changing policies and practices around recruiting and hiring with a lot of these companies. You know, we had one student who went to interview at one of the top tech companies in the Bay Area, and she said, it was so humiliating. I had to call the recruiter and tell her I couldn't check into the hotel because the hotel wanted to put a $400 hold on my debit card, and I didn't have $400. And so this is something we can solve. You should not be expecting a student to pay their own way to get to your internship, to be out significant money to just go to an interview. If she had that $400, she would have been in San Francisco with no access to money until that hold was lifted. You cannot assume that all the students in your hiring pipeline have access to credit and capital. And so we need to build better systems that just eliminate that as a problem at all. And we can do this with a credit card product. It's not rocket science. It just needs to be something that companies realize is a problem and then make changes in their policies. Likewise, with relocation, when you hire someone, a lot of the relocation packages, they won't let you have any of the money until 30 days before your start date. How are you supposed to go to another state and find an apartment and reserve an apartment if you cannot spend a dime more than 30 days out? These are challenges that exist in the system. And unfortunately, the people who are making the policies, they don't experience scarcity in their lives because they have professional salaries. And so I'm trying to bring a little bit of empathy into the system on the employer side so that they can access what is the largest untapped pool of talent, is this group of striving students.
Imagine a fundraising partner that not only helps you raise more money, but also supports you in retaining your donors. A partner that helps you raise funds both online and on location so you can grow your impact faster. That's DonorBox, a comprehensive suite of tools, services, and resources that give fundraisers just like you a custom solution to tackle your unique challenges, helping you achieve the growth and sustainability your organization needs, helping you help others. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. Yeah, and I know that you have an extensive career in policy. And so how has this experience contributed to Last Mile's ability to reduce some of these systemic barriers?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about the policy and advocacy side of this work. And part of the Get Cities partnership is we now have a researcher who's going to be working with me to publish papers. And even though we intuitively know what the problems are and what solutions might be, having research to back it up is really important when you're going to, I think there's some rules in the IRS that need to be changed. Currently, your phone data plan is not an educational expense. You cannot go to college without a smartphone now. Like almost every school has an app that is the way you interact with the entire university. Yet those laws and rules have not been updated. So there's some things that need to change at the federal level in terms of policy around what is educational. There's also policy that needs to change at the institution level and then at the employer level. Having served in the White House and having worked at the federal level on, I'm proud to say, written and passed a federal law, which is a huge feat in this environment. I'm pretty confident that with the right research foundations and the right data to back it up, that we can make some change. And ultimately, I want us as a country to get back to investing in the potential of our people. Like post-World War II, we created the Pell Grant system and we started investing in Americans' education to increase American productivity. Today, we're like, please take $100,000 to $200,000 bet on yourself to get this education, and then we might reward you later. And so it's a huge risk. And I'm not saying every single student needs to go to college, but certainly the ones that have gotten there need to graduate, period. That's just a waste of money. But also, we hear lots of people say, well, what about alternative pathways? And not everyone needs to go to college, et cetera. Yes, but I am not willing to live in a world where only affluent kids get high-level degrees and everyone else is expected to go into an alternative or a blue-collar pathway. Not that those are bad, but we do not want to create a ruling class, which we already have. But like, those pathways need to be available. There's been so much evidence of entire families and communities coming out of poverty through education. Lots of times people want to be like, the system is broken, throw it all away. And I'm very much on the page of, let's work with the system. It's extremely persistent, and work within it to make change and pull big levers so that we can make it permanent and sustainable.
Yeah, I love that. And if I have a listener like who is in the more grassroots organization that's hearing that are obviously meeting the basic needs of individuals is so important, but it's also a systemic issue. So what is your advice for them to both serve their mission on the grassroots level while also making that systemic change? How can it become more accessible or educational for organizations to start to think about influencing policy and advocating on behalf of the issues that they're addressing?
So if I was running a small grassroots local basic needs organization, what I would do is connect up with the local research university and find myself a PhD student who's interested, because learning from your data and learning from your work and being able to share that back out is really powerful. And that's the foundation of the early things we discovered. We're like, these students need money, let's get them the money. And then once we gave them the money, we're talking with them and they're like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do an internship, or I didn't know internships were paid. And what we found was a lot of the students just were very poorly advised. They just didn't know the hidden curriculum of how you get a job in tech, because their schools were second tier schools. Nobody was recruiting there. So the schools weren't focused on it. And so we figured out there was a big missing piece of the puzzle. And so we have partner organizations that provide those things, and we make sure our students get access to those. And so, if you want to break out of the treadmill, I do think we are going to need to be this safety net for students for a long time, because it's going to take some time to change the policy. But if you ultimately want to sunset yourself and not have this problem exist anymore, you want to take the evidence from the work you're doing and turn that into recommendations. And I think it's really important to also do that thoughtfully, because sometimes well-intentioned policies can actually be harmful. And there's lots of examples of this in history. And so we want to work with policymakers to be very thoughtful about how do we enable something that is going to have the right incentive structure and the right pathways for it to actually do what you're hoping it's going to do. But you need to have the data, but you also need to have the heartwarming stories, because that's what gets people really motivated.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Looking ahead, what are the big goals for Last Mile, and how do you see your organization evolving to meet the new challenges and opportunities?
We have been scaling. We scaled 400% last year. So one of our big goals is to really get our heads around exactly how many students exist that need our help, and projecting that out for the next several years to understand like how much money is it going to take to continue to meet the student need, as well as advance our advocacy agenda. That's one big goal. We're starting to find that the word is out. Students have heard about us, but I'm really interested, and I really appreciate the invitation to be on this podcast, because I'm really interested in just sharing our approach to scholarships, giving them in a different way, thinking differently about who deserves investment and what that investment could do. Really interested in changing the way organizations think about who's worthy of investment, whether it be a scholarship or corporate sponsored scholarship or opportunity or internship. By broadening that viewpoint to this abundance viewpoint, I think we're going to get a lot more talent into the pipeline.
I love that. Well, if people want to learn more about Last Mile, where can they find you and the work that you do?
So all over social, we're at Last Mile Fund. in lots and lots of places. We also have obviously a website like everyone. It's lastmile-ed.org. And if you're interested in learning more, always contact me directly. Happy to talk to anybody who's interested. And please share this opportunity with young people. The FAFSA fiasco this year is causing a lot of anxiety. We're facing a dramatic drop in college enrollment this coming fall because of it. So if you know of young people who are facing that challenge, we do have dollars available for students in computer science and engineering disciplines to fill that gap of between what they have and what they need to go back to school in the fall.
Well, thank you so much, Ruthe, for telling us more about you and the work you do. I'm just so appreciative of the work that you do to help students get into the tech and engineering fields. I really appreciated this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you have valued these stories or learned something from what you've heard, please share this podcast episode or follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your support, and together we can build a better community and world.